I don't miss the part. All right, good. I'm assuming that you can see my screen.
I can see your screen.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. It's my pleasure to be here and share our findings and studies on comparative analysis of the effects of YouTube's recommendation algorithm on competing narratives. As Dr. Ignatius introduced me, I am Nitin Agarwal, Director for Cosmos Research Center, that stands for Collaboratorium for Social Media and Online Behavioral Studies, and I'm also Malden Entergy Chair and Distinguished Professor of University of Information Science at University of Arkansas Little Rock, and also a faculty fellow at International Computer Science Institute at UC Berkeley in USA. Let's get started. Before we look into this research, I also wanted to give you a quick tour of what Cosmos is and what it comprises of. So as I mentioned, it stands for Collaboratorium for Social Media and Online Behavioral Studies. This is a statewide research center headquartered in Arkansas. Currently, we have over 40 members from various parts of the world, and I try to map them on this image so you can see where most of our members come from. You can also follow us on various social media platforms. You can look up Cosmographers on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and also on YouTube. Or you can also go to our website to find what we are doing, our accomplishments, more about our members, career opportunities, etc. At Cosmos, I'm leading several research projects that study the full spectrum of online behaviors that I categorize as the good, bad, and the ugly. We explore applications of data mining, social network theory, AI, in a variety of areas that range from studies of campaigns, social movements, deviant behaviors, to smart health, smart cities, and overall social computing and behavioral modeling. And I'm very thankful to all the funding agencies who have supported this work. Currently, I have 35 grants that total over 50 million, out of which $25 million is the portion that support the work directly in Cosmos. All right. So this is the agenda for today's talk. I will first introduce what we mean by bias, why we are doing this research, and how it impacts our society. Second, I will dive into how we collected the data for this study and what methodologies were used to study the data and address the research question that we will outline in the introduction section. Then I will present our results and findings, followed by conclusion and what we are currently doing to expand this work. So as we all know, artificial intelligence based recommendation algorithms predict our shopping behaviors on Amazon, books, articles that we read, videos that we watch. But most of these recommendation algorithms lack transparency. We don't know how these recommendations are being made, whether they are fair, equitable, or not. Right? So, and we have seen recommendation algorithms learn from behavioral data that perpetuate the underlying bias in its recommendations. We have seen numerous cases where YouTube's recommendation algorithms are known to push the viewers down conspiratorial rabbit holes uh, through suggested or related videos. Similarly, on other platforms like Facebook, ads to recruit delivery drivers for Domino's Inc. were disproportionately shown to men, while women were more likely to receive notices in recruiting shoppers for grocery delivery services. So clearly, there is an underlying bias in these algorithms, which is, of course, being fed through the data that they are trained on. So this research tries to help detect, measure, and characterize that bias, which can then help in identifying causes of biased recommendations, which we hope that can help in mitigating the bias and also enhancing models transparency. And the reason we chose to conduct the study on YouTube is because YouTube is one of the largest video sharing platform that has quite an impact on our society. Over 6 billion hours of videos are watched by visitors every month. YouTube reports that more than two-thirds of its traffic is driven by the recommendations that are made through their related videos segment. With its recommendation algorithm driving the type of information users are exposed to, I think it is important to analyze these recommendation systems and understand how potential algorithmic bias may affect users, may affect narratives that are shown or suppressed or amplified. So we analyze these algorithms for the presence of bias and what it does to the original narratives that we are looking for or searching. In our studies, we have developed several ways to measure bias and characterize it. This one slide tries to summarize all of that information, but I'm glad that this talk is recorded because I have also provided a link or reference to the site, to the paper, which summarizes much of these studies. Um, but I'm not going to go too much in depth about this particular study, but I will actually go through a more systematic analysis of bias. But just to bring you guys up to speed on what we are doing in terms of analyzing or measuring bias, we have developed ways to measure and characterize it. We observed bias and its impact. Bias varies based on context. Bias also results in closed content communities. So in this case, as you can see, we use various measures like power law, distribution fitting, Gini coefficient that can be used to detect inequalities or biased distributions of the data. So those type of measures are used to detect how much bias there exists in the data. In this case, recommendations in YouTube. On the chart in the right, where I have put a red box around a graph, this basically shows existence of bias across different contexts. So when we look for context related to COVID-19 or entertainment, sports, politics, etc., so content that is related to these type of contexts, when we look at the bias, we found that during the initial stages of COVID-19, there was particularly extremely high bias in the YouTube recommendation algorithms that suggested some of the videos were recommended quite often than the others. And more often, these videos were suggesting alternate remedies, in some cases, sometimes even misinformation or conspiracy theories. What we found was several weeks or months later, many of these top recommended videos were also suspended or banned from YouTube platform. So this basically allows us to see how bias varies across different contexts. This was the highest in COVID-19 compared to various other contexts that we compared. So we looked at around 8 contexts, and it was highest in the COVID-19. We also see how bias affects the content communities because, as we all know, recommendations tend to form close communities. So we looked at several political topics and saw that the content that is recommended by YouTube tends to form these closed communities, or often they are called as information bubbles or echo chambers. So these were also detected in our studies. But this is good because it shows that there is bias. We can measure bias. We can characterize it based on the context or content. But now we wanted to dig deeper and conduct a more precise and systematic analysis. So we examined how bias varies in subsequent recommendations from one level to the next, all the way up to 5 levels of recommendations, and how topics and emotions change over these levels. So can we measure that drift? And then further, can we visualize that bias so that anyone who may or may not have the full technical understanding of AI concepts or recommendations can still appreciate this problem and contribute to the solution space? So to do that, for this study, we selected a pair of competing narratives. So one of them is the Uyghur narrative, which is about the marginalization of Muslim minorities in Xinjiang region. And the other is Cheng Ho narrative, which is about a Muslim Chinese naval admiral in the 15th century, who's nicknamed as the Chinese Columbus. and he was considered as a symbol of China's Islamic diplomacy and peaceful ascendancy to power. The Cheng Ho mythology seeks to advance China's Islamic diplomacy by portraying him as a benevolent giver who spread Islam across Southeast Asia, particularly Indonesia. And the manipulation of this narrative is intended to increase regional support for China's maritime Silk Road, Belt Road Initiative, infrastructure development projects in the Southeast Asia, but also as a counter narrative to the oppression of the Uyghur Muslim communities. So, in order to conduct this study, we identified, with the help of subject matter expertise, a set of keywords for each of these two narratives, went on YouTube, used their APIs to collect several videos, and then showed those videos to the subject matter experts, who then assessed the relevance of these videos, identified few that are highly relevant versus the others that were noisy, irrelevant, not directly connected to the subject matter, and then we chose those seed videos to further conduct the data collection. Okay, so I'm going to go over how we collect the data in more depth. So again, as I mentioned, starting from the keywords, we select seed videos, which are curated from relevance assessment through subject matter experts. Using those seed videos and probing YouTube's recommendation algorithm APIs, we were able to collect videos for each depth. So starting from seed, what are the videos that are recommended based on those seed set of videos? And then from the first depth, what are the second depth videos, third, fourth, fifth, and so on, right? So we explored up to 5 depths and collected all the videos that were shown by the YouTube's recommendation algorithms along the way. So for each of the narratives, so Uyghur as well as Chenghu, we were able to collect several thousands of videos, tens of thousands of videos. So for Uyghur, since we started with only 10 seed videos, we had 14,000 videos at the end. And for Chenghu narrative, we had close to 60,000 videos to analyze, right? Now, when I say analyze, which means that we have collected not just the video titles, we are collecting everything from YouTube, including video titles, description, and even transcripts, um, and engagement statistics, views, likes, number of comments, etc. Now, a little more about transcripts. If anyone here has conducted data collection from YouTube, you would know that on YouTube you can get some transcripts which are transcribed by YouTube algorithm itself. Or if the YouTube algorithms do not show the transcript, then you can use models like Whisper or from OpenAI to transcribe the videos automatically, right? But that's a very lengthy, cumbersome, and time-consuming process. So we went through that painstaking process to transcribe each and every video so that we now have collection of not just the title of these videos, but the everything that is being said in or about the video. Okay. All right. So that is all about data collection. Now, for the methodology, since we wanted to study how emotion varies over number of depths, similarly how topic drifts over these recommendation hops or depths, we analyzed emotion using our emonet libraries, where we are given these different emotion labels given any data. So we will have emotions like joy, anger, sadness, fear, surprise, love. For topic similarity, we construct LDA-based topic models for all the data that is collected. And then from one depth to the subsequent depth, we calculate the topical distance using Hellinger divergence or distance measure or Jensen-Shannon divergence measure. Right? Now, this is about.
I have a question here, unless you want to answer the questions at the end, but it's a bit more relevant to what you just said. Do you want me to read it out, or can you see the chat yourself?
Okay.
So, Gloriana is asking, why did you have only 10 videos for the Uyghur narratives and 50 for the Shanghai narratives?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It depended on the keywords that were provided. So as I mentioned, the keywords that were provided by the subject matter experts allowed us to collect many videos, but out of those, only 10 were identified as relevant as compared to the Cheng Ho keyword set where we were able to identify many videos, and out of those 50 were identified as relevance. So basically this was yeah, identified by the subject matter experts how many videos are relevant out of the
Okay.
initially collected data set.
Okay. As a quick follow-up to that, when you used Whisper for transcription, for instance, or any other thing like that, what to take and so on, what forget. Do you have to do additional post-editing on them, or do you trust the transcription completely without manual intervention?
Right. So we also tested Whisper AI's transcription capabilities. And you're right, not every model is very accurate. Whisper's by far is one of the most accurate, and it is also used quite widely in many other research studies.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, and a little bit more about the keywords and the videos. Although it may seem that it is unbalanced, but we have already conducted another study where we have looked at 50 seed, which is currently in the review stage. So where we have 50 seed videos for both Uyghur and Changho narratives, and then we have also added few more narratives to this study. But I didn't want to include any unpublished analysis in the slides in this talk. So, but the findings were consistent. So what we have seen for these seed videos and for Changho and Uyghur narratives, as you will see later slides, the findings that we have seen for balanced data set is also consistent with this. All right. So coming back to the methodology, so we want to study emotion drift and topic drift over time, over the number of hops, but also we want to see who are the attractors or popular nodes in the recommendation network. So as you can imagine, you start from seed to depth one, depth two, and so on. We want to know who are the influential nodes in each of these depths, basically how they are changing the course of the recommendations. Okay, because the ones that are recommended the most are the ones probably are also watched the most. So in order to address that research question, whether they are watched the most or how they are shifting the recommendations, shifting the narratives from one depth to the subsequent depths, we also conduct popularity assessment, where we look at the videos likes, videos views, and that helps us see what type of videos are recommended, whether they are more popular videos or less popular, and what happens when we suggest or when the recommendation algorithms suggest that these are highly influential videos. Are they also very popular and not just central nodes in the recommendation network? The network analysis also tells us the topic communities, meaning are there content clusters? Do we get those closed content communities in each hop, just like we saw in the initial part of the slides, where we did see these filter bubbles or echo chambers forming. Okay, so all of this analysis will be shown in the next few slides. So as I already discussed a little bit about topic drift, for those who are already familiar with LDA, etc., this slide may not be needed, but I'll just quickly go over to make sure that everyone is familiar with this concept. So LDA topic model is used to identify topics, which is basically an abstraction of documents into a topical space. That tells us what type of keywords are more associated with the collection of documents. And then you can infer based on those collection of keywords what topics these documents would belong to. Okay. And then from one hop to the other or one depth to the other, we can measure distance between two topical distributions using any distance scores like Hellinger or Jensen-Shannon or KL divergence, etc. So in this case, we used Hellinger as well as Jensen-Shannon, and both resulted in the same. All right. So we performed a network analysis to understand the network structure within the recommendation depths. The aim was to observe how the recommendation network evolves as we progress through the recommendation depths. We utilized eigenvector centrality to measure the influence of the videos, or basically who are the most influential videos in the recommendation network. Applying the eigenvector centrality measure to the network helps identify the influential videos that act as attractors in the recommendation network. So basically the idea is no matter where you start in the recommendation network, the chances are that you will watch that highly influential video because it is so popular or so influential. Okay. And we will show some network visualizations that will make this concept even clearer. And then we determine topical similarity of the recommended videos to the seed narrative. Right? Then we performed emotion analysis to examine the emotions embedded in the recommendations, and that way we were able to measure emotion drift between hops. And emotion analysis involves detecting the emotions behind a text. As we all know, this produces 6 different emotions: anger, fear, joy, love, surprise, sadness. And we computed distribution of emotions for each depth and visualized it, how it is drifting. Okay, so let's start looking into the results. So this is the topical similarity results for the Uyghur narrative. And here we show you the depth to depth similarity, meaning how from seed to depth 1 and depth 1 to depth 2, the topical space is changing or it is varying. Okay, so basically the x-axis here shows you the distance between seed or the depth 0, the starting point, depth 1, and then the distance between depth 1 and depth 2 using the topical space. Right, and on y-axis you get the score from your Hellinger distance measure. Right, so basically the higher that means you have more similarity. So this is basically between 0 and 1 you have highest distance, and then between 1 and 2 the distance drops and so on. So basically gradually you can see that this is drifting away from the seed topic. So seed topic was Uyghur, and then slowly we find ourselves into a different, completely different territory. And when we looked at these, Uyghur is largely anti-China narrative. And then when we start looking at other narratives from depth 1, depth 2, and so on, these are more pro-China narratives, or I would say less anti-China narratives that are not talking about Uyghur. Or basically, we can see that the Uyghur narrative was being suppressed. Okay. Now, for the Cheng Ho narrative, the interesting case was that we also picked up quite a few non-English videos. Right. So as you can see, the distribution of language here, best highest language distribution was Indonesian, followed by English, and then various others like Tagalog, Dutch, Korean, etc. So in order to do the analysis on this, we had to basically separate out the two different data sets, English and Indonesian, and then conduct the topical drift, emotion drift, etc. So for topical drift for Django, when we look at the Hellinger scores depth-wise, we see a similar pattern, meaning there is a drift, gradual drift in the topical space. So starting from Django, we are moving away from the Cheng Ho narrative to a different narrative. However, when we analyze these videos in the subsequent depths and later depths, we saw that although it was not about Cheng Ho per se, but it was still more about pro-China. So starting from a pro-China narrative, we are still seeing more and more pro-Chinese narratives. Okay. And this was consistent within the English documents as well as the Indonesian videos. All right. When we look at the emotion, this is also a very interesting analysis. For the Uyghur, which if you remember, this is an anti-China, so a lot of anger um, uh, is expressed in these videos because of the mistreatment, marginalization of Uyghur communities. So it was expected to see high anger sentiment in the initial part of the videos. But as we move gradually away from this narrative over different depths, we see that the emotions start to change quite a bit. Anger drops significantly from 0 to first hop, or from seed to depth 1, and the other emotions, particularly joy, starts climbing up, suggesting that we are seeing less and less of those videos about Uyghur, about marginalization, mistreatment, but more and more about pro-China, the growth, economic prosperity, inclusiveness, investment in infrastructure development projects, etc. Okay. Now, in the Cheng Ho analysis, it was quite a different observation than what we saw in the Uyghur. So in Cheng Ho analysis, for the emotion, we saw that joy was a particularly high emotion in the seed videos, because this was about ascendancy to power, benevolence, and how Cheng Ho has spread Islam in various Southeast Asian countries, particularly Indonesia. So we see a lot of positive emotions, joy in these videos, and that stays throughout. Okay, so as you can see in various depths, even though we are again moving away from the narrative, but more videos that are recommended in depth 2, 3 onwards, we start seeing that these are still talking more about pro-Chinese narratives. Okay, and this is consistent within English as well as Indonesian video space. Right. So that shows us how topic drift was measured and observed. Similarly, how emotion drift was measured and observed. Now, looking at the network analysis, which is basically tells us whether there are content communities in these recommendation networks, and also what are the attractors. So again, when we start from depth 1 recommendation network, so imagine you have the seed videos, and then from seed videos you collect a set of videos that were recommended, and these will allow you to see which videos were recommended based on what videos. So those connections are basically the recommendation edges. You will easily notice that some videos were recommended quite more. So if you start from here, you will end up with this video, and then following by this video. So basically, very soon you will end up in a video which has higher eigenvector centrality. And all these nodes are sized based on their eigenvector centrality. The larger the node, the higher the eigenvector centrality, meaning more popular that video is, or more it is recommended. And clearly we can see several content communities here, which shows that these are closed content communities, filter bubbles or echo chambers that were formed. So if you're locked within any of these communities, you won't be able to see the video from other communities. Okay. Now from depth 1 to depth 2, you can see that the recommendation network starts to crowd up, and all the way to depth 5, there you can see these giant attractors. So these are the attractors which I was talking about, that through eigenvector centrality, we are able to find these big nodes in the network that are the videos that are more recommended, or are highly influential videos. Okay. So the videos in each depth are ranked based on their eigenvector centrality. We observe that influential nodes in the network evolve from relevant videos to irrelevant videos about the Chang Ho topic. One of the things that we also observed in this data was it showed us what type of videos are being recommended more. So these eigenvector centrality nodes, or high prominent or high influential nodes, came from channels um, like a Sumi channel that had a talk show called Shagwan, which was again a highly pro-China talk show that suggested investments in infrastructure development, growth, etc., in the Indonesian region. Okay. Now, we were also curious about how the popularity bias exists among these videos, meaning what happens to the videos that are recommended? Are these being watched more or less? So when we look at the engagement statistics, we definitely find that there is clearly a bias towards more popular or more watched and viewed or liked videos. So as you can see here, when we start from the seed, we have the lowest view or lowest video likes count, and then similarly as you go from the seed to first, second, third depth onwards, you will notice that there is a significant increase up to depth third and fourth, and after that it tapers off, meaning um, there is a clear bias towards highly liked videos, similarly highly viewed videos, but then it does not carry forward onwards. So after fourth, basically this tells us that this is law of diminishing returns. After that, it doesn't matter. All these videos are so popular that it just gets more and more recommended. Okay. All right. I also mentioned that how can we visualize these drifts so that it becomes easier for anyone without that much technical knowledge to understand and appreciate this problem. So we investigated into something called radar charts, where we would show how for a particular narrative, the topic drift, emotion drift, and other drifts occurs. So this is the radar chart for the topical space. So you can imagine that there are 10 topics that are discovered from the Uyghur dataset, and we show the seed depth, which is the starting point, depth 0, and then intermediate depth, which is depth 3 in orange color, and then the last depth, which is depth 5, which is in this blue or teal color, right? So starting from this purple seed, you can see that topic 3, which is the which is the Uyghur topic, it is very dominant in the data set. But over the number of different hops, you can start to see that this topic shrinks and other topics are gaining prominence, suggesting that this topic or this narrative is being suppressed during these recommendations. Okay. Similarly, when we look at the Cheng Ho topic drift, again, topic 3 is the dominant topic, which was the Cheng Ho topic in this data set. And clearly, that topic also shrinks, and there is a presence of other topics. Okay. For emotion, we have 6 different labels, starting from anger, joy, fear, sadness, surprise, and love. For Uyghur, we know that it started with very high anger about mistreatment, marginalization of Uyghur communities. And then slowly we see that as we approach depth 5, joy picks up. So depth 3, we see anger reducing, and then depth 5, anger further reduces, and joy is the highest. However, for Cheng Ho, it was quite different. We see that it started out with joy, and then joy emotion stayed very high across all depths. Okay. Now, just to summarize how this topic and emotion and network analysis stacks for these two counter narratives, these two pair of opposing competing narratives, we see that for Uyghur, recommendations were biased, steers the audience away from anti-China to pro-China content. For Cheng Ho, we see that starting from a pro-China narrative, the recommendations move to further pro-China content, which is about positive imaging of China, BRI infrastructure development, etc. For Uyghur, we see that there's overly joyful content about China gets recommended, which started from disheartening or Uyghur mistreatment videos. For Cheng Ho, joy stays as the dominant emotion throughout all the depths. In network analysis of the recommendation graph for Uyghur, we detected influential pro-China videos that were being recommended as attractors. Similarly, for Cheng Ho, influential attractor pro-China videos or channels were detected. And again, these are all published studies, so I've provided the references so you can read up more on these. All right, so I'll start summarizing. What we have seen here is algorithms tend to reduce negative emotions, anger, and amplify positive emotions, joy, across recommended videos on the platform. At least we have seen that for these two competing narratives. Highly influential videos at each depth act as attractors to gently draw recommendations away from the content related to seed videos, which we saw and analyzed what are these attractor videos and channels, and we found that these were the ones who were amplifying certain narratives as opposed to the seed narrative. Now in future, our current research directions include our additional narratives. So we are looking at different starting motions that have different contexts, We are looking at different video types, so not just YouTube long form videos. We are also looking at short videos, reels, etc., and including other platforms like TikTok, Instagram. So basically, expanding the scope of the research in all possible directions. Also, I'd like to mention that if anyone is interested in these type of projects, I would invite you to take a look at our center website. I have several positions that I'm hiring on, including graduate research assistants at master's, PhD level, postdoc fellows, data engineer full-time positions, DevOps positions. So you can visit center website at cosmos.ulr.edu. And if you have any questions about these positions, feel free to contact me. Again, I would like to thank all the students who have helped in conducting this research and all the funding agencies that have supported this work. And a big thank you to all of you for attending this talk. And I look forward to having your questions and answering your questions.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much. Um, Thank you very, very much. That's a very well delivered talk. All right. This is time for questions. I know that some questions were previously asked in the chat area, but if you have a question, please kindly raise your hand or mute yourself or put it in the chat. So while people are thinking about the question they will ask, can I quickly ask if you have also explored some sort of bias mitigation strategies in the way these algorithms work, such that people are not, inadvertently going down a route that they don't intend to because they've watched any of these videos.
Right. I think that's a great question. And I believe the research is getting at a point where it is exposing or revealing these type of biases in the content. Also, how it varies by the context. What are the impacts of such bias in forming content communities, suppressing or amplifying narratives. The next step would be to take this research to designing bias mitigation strategies, whether it is some type of regulations around these algorithms to make them more fairer, transparent, open, or uh, having some type of a tuning factor where um, feeding frenzies like the ones that I have shown can be avoided. But I think that would largely have to be done in a collaboration with researchers as well as the the media platforms. So if you're talking about YouTube, then I believe it has to be done in collaboration with YouTube or Twitter or Facebook.
Yeah, because I think it will be very difficult for them to. So the whole idea is to keep people watching certain videos that are drawing that are keeping people there, right? So it
Yeah.
will be very difficult for them to lead on that, on looking because the whole commercial strategy that they use is to make sure they drag you into watching what they think is popular. Okay, Gloriana has a question. Hand up.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can.
Yeah. Okay, right. Thanks for the interesting talk. And I hope I didn't miss this, but I was wondering, have you also considered emotion analysis from speech? Because I think you only worked with the transcripts, right? And yeah, have you considered also looking at the audio signal basically you have available?
Absolutely. Great question, Gloriana. What we have also started looking at is, and we have a paper coming out on this, emotion analysis from speech, which is the audio signal. So not just the transcript. We are doing emotion analysis from three modalities, which is, of course, the text, which we have seen, audio signal, which we are currently doing using a library called Liposa, which allows us to extract audio signals and the emotions from that. And the other thing that we are doing is from the images or the video itself, right?
Yeah.
Which is quite challenging task, because one way to do that is to look at the faces and the emotions on the faces and then guess what type of emotions could exist from the facial expressions. The other is to use the colors that are embedded in the video. So we are using color theory to find out what emotions the video producer wanted to evoke from the audience by using certain colors, which is the foundation principle of color theory and used by major Hollywood production videos, etc. So we are trying to combine these three modalities: text, video, and the audio signals.
Okay.
So as soon as that paper comes out, I would be happy to share that with you.
Okay, amazing. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. There seem to be no more questions, and people are also dropping off to join other calls. Thank you, Professor Nitin. Thank you for coming. Like I said, I'll make this available. If you are willing to share your slides as well, that would be great. So I can also put it up on the website or any other resources that you want us to also point people to, especially with regards to the work you do in Cosmo. Okay. Thank you for honoring our invitation.
It is my pleasure, and thank you again for inviting me. It was a great discussion, and I will definitely send you the slides and look forward to being in touch.
All right then. Bye.
Take,
Thank you.
bye, everyone.
Bye,
Take care.
Gloriana. Yeah.
Bye bye. Thank you.